And it's interesting to hear from Dimitri and also Abiodun about the work that has been done so far to get this event, and also the work of Friends of Nigeria. And it's a pleasure. My name is Wilson Erumebor. I work as a senior economist with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which is basically an advocacy and a think tank organization. What we basically do, we engage the government on different policy areas. Provide advice, we do research, evidence-based advice and suggestions to the government on different reforms to ensure that we have a strong business environment, a business environment that is friendly to both to private sector investments, because we believe that that is what will take Nigeria to the next level. So in the course of doing that, we get to engage with several government agencies, development partners like the World Bank. We get to implement several projects, obtain grants from some of these institutions. We also do summits. We've done summits for 26 years. We just concluded the 26th Nigerian Economic Summit last year, November, which is basically a gathering of the key players in the economy, private sector and public sector, and even the academia as well, to discuss on the future of Nigeria and how to reposition the economy for private sector investment. So it's a pleasure for me to be part of this event and to see that there's quite a number of interest of people who want to do business in Nigeria, who wants to engage in one way or the other with the Nigerian economy. So I would just briefly speak on the macroeconomic fundamentals of Nigeria, because of course, if you're to do business in the country, it's also important to understand the environment in which you operate, particularly from a macro economic perspective. So Abiodun has also highlighted some of those key points. The fact that we have a population of over 200 million people, 210 to be precise for last year, which is quite large. Nigeria is one of the, I think, among the top 10 largest countries in terms of population. Population growth is also quite high at about 3% per annum. In terms of GDP, Nigeria's GDP is somewhere around $410 billion. And of course, with the COVID pandemic, we had series of lockdown in April last year, which basically resulted to a decline in GDP growth. So we had a negative growth of minus 6.1% in the second quarter. In the third quarter, we also had a negative growth, which meant that the economy fell into a recession. So we had a minus 3.6% growth in the third quarter, which is more or less like an improvement from the second quarter, and simply because the government saw the need to open up the economy. And sorry, there was a disruption. So which basically meant that the government had to open up the economy to, from the lockdown period, and businesses were able to, people were able to do business and all that. So that led to a somewhat improvement in the GDP figures, like just as we saw in the third quarter. So hopefully in the fourth quarter, we're expecting growth to still fall within the negative region, but somewhere improved or much better than what we recorded in the second quarter. So in terms of the structure of the economy, Nigeria has an economy that is predominantly dominated by services. And so services account for about 53% of the economy. And then you have agriculture, which has about a quarter of the economy. And then you have industry. Industry also accounts for about 22-23%. So that tells you that Nigeria is more service-based and a lot more agriculture. Agriculture also is very important because it employs about 48% of the total labor force in the country. So there's this talk and this idea and motive to want to move away from reliance on agriculture, and then moving away from reliance on crude oil as well, particularly when you look at the fact that oil accounts for, although just 9% of GDP, but when you look at export earnings, foreign exchange, and reserves accretion, oil is very significant. So there's a talk about diversifying the economy away from the primary sectors, moving into the secondary sectors, and also the services as well, ensuring that there's more value added in the service sector. And this is particularly important, especially when we're talking about investment, because everybody, I mean, even the government quarters, there's the general notion that it is private investment that would get the economy to where it should be, not necessarily government driving some of the sectors, activities within the sectors, as we saw, in the early 80s and in the 90s as well. So there's the desire and intent to want to make the business environment friendly, and just like Abiodun pointed, Nigeria moved about 15 places up on the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking a couple of years ago, from 145 to 131. So still not where the country should be, especially when you look at the potentials, but it signals that there is the commitment from the government. So there's the government has set up the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which is a group of policymakers that within the government, that whose mission is basically to see how they can improve the business environment, attract more investment, simplify some of the processes, especially when it has to do with getting permits, issues relating to registration of businesses and supporting businesses to grow, government regulation of businesses. So looking at the regulatory environment, some of the legal policies and legal instruments that also needs to be changed. We've seen the passage of several laws that have opened up, different sectors, for business activities. So there's a whole lot of potential. From a trade perspective, we have a trade value of about $100 billion, dominated by exports, which accounted for about 57%. And of course, exports is still dominated by crude oil itself. Non-oil exports account for less than 10% of total exports, which also is a strong opportunity, because of course Nigeria plays a major role in West Africa. Nigeria's GDP is about over 70% of West Africa's GDP. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. So all this point to the fact that Nigeria has that key role to play, especially also in the light of the newly signed African Free Trade, area agreement, Continental Free Trade Area agreement. So all these show that there is so much potential. So at the NESG, one of the things we're doing is to see how we can get the government to implement some of the reforms that we highlighted, some of the ease of doing business reforms at a much faster pace, so that we can attract investment. Yes, we know that it's a journey, it's a process, it's something that will take time. We've seen commitment at different levels, even at state government levels, to want to implement some of these reforms. And so our main goal is to advocate and to engage government. So in the course of doing that, we get to meet with government officials on a regular basis. We organize forums, and events, and even at the summit as well, to keep the conversation going. We do research. We're quite heavy on research. In February, we will be launching a report which looks at the macroeconomic outlook. And if you want to be part of it, we can also share the link, because it's going to be virtual, which would define priorities for the economy in 2021 and beyond. So these are some, we are quite heavy on macroeconomic modeling as well to provide evidence to whatever policy agenda we are, advocating for. So I would say in concluding remarks that the Nigeria is open to business. Yes, there are challenges and there's some risk, issues relating to insecurity, particularly in some parts of the country. There are also issues relating to foreign exchange, and of course, which came as a result of, which even was amplified as a result of the COVID pandemic, and especially the fact that crude oil price declined, and Nigeria was also among the countries that was hardly hit by both the lockdown and the fall in crude oil price. So so it's led to a situation where the external reserves, had continued on a declining trend. But more recently, we've seen accretion to the reserves as oil price has increased. So, but in summary, what we are also advocating for is complete and total diversification of the economy away from reliance of crude oil to explore opportunities across the different value chains, particularly in manufacturing. Also in the services sector, in the last couple of years, Nigeria has seen tremendous growth in ICT penetration, growth in businesses that provide ICT services, and we also have a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. We have a growing number of young Nigerians who are increasingly coming up with creative ideas on how to do business, on how to interact with the society. We've seen the development of the springing up of several web platforms, online platforms. We've seen also, ICT centers. There's a venture gardens group. So many of them, and this has also sparked interest of particularly investors in the US and in Europe, putting some money behind some of these innovative ideas. Many Nigerians have gone to create, interesting and new businesses that have dominated different parts of the continent, whether it's Andela, whether it's Paystack, and and many other businesses. So there's so much opportunities to be explored, even in the midst of the challenges that we are facing. And I would also, advise and urge people to take up some of these opportunities and also look at ways for which you can invest in the country in different sectors. There's so many sectors. From an incentive point of view, the government has also, there's several incentives like the pioneer status, pioneer industry status, which basically means that if you want to invest in an industry that falls under the pioneer category, you would have to, be exempted from taxes for a specified period of time. I think about 3 years. So you wouldn't pay corporate taxes. There are also incentives provided, for different sectors of the economy. And yes, the challenges are still there, especially when it comes to implementing some of these. But there are beneficiaries, that have received these incentives. And the spirit here in Nigeria is, amidst all the challenges, we keep forging ahead, we keep going forward. They've been, entrepreneurs that have created businesses out of nothing, and these businesses have dominated Africa and even have presence in different parts of the country. And we believe that as we keep going on, as much as even as NESG keeps engaging the government on different areas of opening up the economy and ensuring that we have a friendly business environment, we believe that Nigeria will thrive and will continue to play a key role in Africa, and perhaps move beyond Africa to play a key role in the global economy. Thank you.